Hello and welcome to the Truthwards podcast, where we discuss natural solutions for chronic health conditions. I'm Natalie Kasana, and I'm so glad you're listening. I hope you find it as intriguing as I do. I'd like to start by noting that the views and opinions shared during this podcast are my own and do not reflect the views of my employer or any affiliated organizations, and that equally applies to any guests. Additionally, I am not a licensed healthcare professional, and any advice shared on this podcast is not meant to be a substitute for professional medical advice. I would always encourage you to seek the opinion of a healthcare provider before trying any possible healing paths to establish a clinical diagnosis and assess possible risks or interference with current medications. In this episode, you'll hear about Renee's experience recovering from severe Lyme disease and all the details of what worked as well as what didn't work for her along the way. We'll also talk about what worked for her husband and her children when also recovering from Lyme disease, as well as her experience doing a gallbladder flush. Hi, Renee. Welcome to the Truthwords podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today and for being willing to share the details of some of the natural solutions that have worked for you and your family.
Thank you for having me. It's one of my favorite topics. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'm so interested about Lyme disease, which is one of the topics we're going to talk about today. Growing up, I remember feeling a lot of fear around that topic when Lyme disease started to become prevalent, because I loved running around and playing outside. And then I became fearful that I would always get a tick bite and that I would get Lyme disease. And I think there's a lot of unknown about that disease and guessing and fear of it getting bad and not knowing how to resolve it. So if there are natural solutions that have worked for you and your family, I think it's so valuable to hear that information and share it.
I know so many people around here. I live what I call Tick City because it's just prevalent here in Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin. And so I almost get concerned inviting guests from out of town to come because they're afraid of it and getting it. But as we've dealt with it, I first got it in 1992, I believe, so a long time ago, when it was really new and people didn't really know much about it. But in dealing with it, I started out dealing with it traditionally and didn't like the direction it was going. So then I just started experimenting and trying my own things. And in doing that for myself and for the rest of my family who got it, 9 out of my 12 children have all had Lyme disease, and my husband. And what I noticed was that the people who were getting it when I got it, they would get relief with the antibiotics or however the doctor was treating it, and then 6 months down the road, a reoccurrence, and then relief, and then reoccurrence. And they seemed to continually struggle with it, and I didn't want to do that. So what I've noticed in doing and healing the Lyme disease naturally is that it seems like we have built a natural immunity to it, because since I healed, and it took some time to fully get it out of my system, but since then I've been bit repeatedly, usually every year, and have never contracted Lyme again or had problems with flare-ups with it again, and I've noticed it in my children too. One child seems to have a little bit lower immune system. And if he lets it get really low, he might have a little flare up. But other than that, I think we have built a natural immunity so that if we get bit by a tick infected with Lyme, our body has the antibody in it to fight it off. So there's no fear around it anymore. And they're so tiny. People say, do your check every night before you go to bed, because if you can get them before they're embedded, before 12 hours, that 12-hour window, you can prevent Lyme disease. But some of them, like the very nymph stage, the very teeny tiny beginning stage, I found one in my child's eyelash line there, stuck right in there. And so tiny that, when they smile and go like this, you wouldn't even see it. So they're everywhere, can get anywhere. And they like those little cozy places. And I just gave up on that. I thought, if we get Lyme, I know how to deal with it now, and we'll just do that, because it's just too much. With 12 kids, it was too much.
Yeah. And that's why I'm so inspired by your story, because the reality is it's just too hard to prevent all the time. And if you know that there's ways to heal it, there doesn't need to be that fear anymore. So that's really optimistic and encouraging and exciting.
I was just going to say, and the cure is so simple. It takes a little time, but it's for the children especially, is so simple. Their immune system is still so strong and good, I think, is why for them it took way less time than for Nathan and I to heal from it.
Got it. So you were mentioning a moment ago that 9 out of your 12 children got Lyme disease. So let's take a step back there and just talk about the fact that you had 12 children and you raised them in the country, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. I have an amazing place. Even driving here to the spot where I'm doing this podcast, I just pulled out of my driveway and I almost every time just say, I love living here. It's just been such a wonderful place to have a big family and raise our kids.
Yeah, I can relate so much because I grew up in the country too and I loved it. And you're located in northern Wisconsin, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. 80 miles south of Duluth or an hour and a half south of Duluth.
Lovely. And so let's back up to when you, let's say, were exposed to Lyme disease yourself. You said that was when you were younger, right? And was that before you had kids that you first had Lyme disease?
No, when I got it, I was nursing my third baby. And so I was following the natural, like I said, the natural things that everybody did was just go to the doctor. You have Lyme disease, you go to the doctor. And because I was nursing a baby at the time, it was my third one, the doctor didn't want to give me antibiotics. So he just prescribed some penicillin. I took the penicillin and it worked for about 3 months. I had no symptoms, no achy joints or anything. And then it came back again. And so I went back to the doctor and now he wanted to prescribe intravenous antibiotics. And I didn't want to do that. To this day, I've never had antibiotics, and I really attribute a lot of my health to that fact. And I think in this culture, antibiotics are looked at almost like a vitamin, just hand them out. And yet it's destroying so much of your gut and your immune system every time you do that. It's wiping out the good things also. So my gut is really strong. I feel like my immune system is peak because I've never had that. The reason that I didn't want to go to intravenous antibiotics is because it wasn't because I was so smart. I think I was 26 at the time. It was because I was so thrifty. I was raised by a thrifty mom. And it was because I was so thrifty. And I was like, I'm not going to spend all this extra money doing intravenous antibiotics. I'll find another way. And that's kind of what got me started on the natural cures. And as I think back to my mother, I think that's why we didn't go to the doctor also. It's because she was so thrifty and didn't want to fork out extra money. So we cured things with throat discs and baby aspirin and, a little hot lemonade, things like that. But my oldest sister, who's 20 years older than I am, she was getting into natural cures, not natural cure. She was getting into healthy eating, the whole grains and canning and processing her own foods from her garden and all those things. And that kind of got me a little bit on that path when I was a teenager, just watching her and being inspired by her. But we became a friend of a man who was an iridologist who looks in your eyes and your iris, and I suppose other parts of the eye too, the whites, but the iris in particular the different parts of it stand for different organs or represent different organs in your body. And so when there's lesions or things happening in that part, then he would know that that's the part of my body that's needing help. Excuse me. Again, I think that my mom at that point decided to let me go to him for what I was dealing with at the time is because it was only like $50 for a visit at the time, and he would quickly look in my eyes and then just do like a litmus test for the saliva and urine. And then he put me on a protocol and had me do some different cleanses and things and solve the problem. And the problem at that time was minor. From like 14 to 18, my cycle just stopped. And so no reason that I could find, but as he did his little litmus test and looking in my eyes, he said, have you ever been on drugs? And I said, I barely even take aspirin. And he said, because you have a real big toxic overload. And so he just started having me cleanse my body. And I really think, because I also know that health has a lot to do with the emotions you chronically carry. It's been said that 85% of your health is due to if you're peaceful or stressful, if you're happy or sorrowful, all those emotions you chronically carry. And I had a lot of anger that I had stuffed and held and wasn't allowed to express. So I think it was from that. But he had me do the cleanses and changed my diet up. And within about 3-4 months, my cycle came back and 12
Wow.
kids later, we know it stayed. So, so
Wow.
that experience there at 18, and like I said, I think my mom didn't send me to the doctor, but said, well, let's just try this because it was so inexpensive and, what the heck, let's just try it. And so seeing that got me thinking more about natural cures. So when I got Lyme disease, I was more willing, I think, to let me just start experimenting. My husband used to say, they're practicing medicine. Why can't we? Why can't we try this, try that, and do things that maybe don't hit the spot that you want, but at least you're not having bad side effects. You healed your hearing instead of your gut, maybe, So the side effects
Yup.
from healthy cures are usually good ones, as you're experimenting around. So
I love that perspective. Like, why can't we experiment and try some of these things too, especially when it comes to your own health and natural
yeah,
solutions? Yeah, like you said, have beneficial side effects, which is amazing.
yeah.
So when you think about, when you first got Lyme disease, just for someone who might not even know what that's like, how did you know, oh, I think I have Lyme disease, let me go to the doctor? And what kind of symptoms did you get?
Well, I had been struggling with I remember getting a fever and then just being achy all over my body and just thinking it's something that's going around. And I think it wasn't until one day we lived off grid at that time. So we were living with kerosene lamps. And so I would get dressed in the morning in the dark and I would go to bed in the dark, with really dim lighting. And it wasn't until one day when I was outside when I looked at my legs and I just saw all these bullseye rashes. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I haven't even been noticing that I have this rash. I don't know if it had just sprung up or what, but that was my sure sign that I had Lyme disease and that's what I was struggling with. And it began to affect my joints severely where, just wake up in the morning and all of a sudden it's like I can't hardly walk. My knee is so infected, or the shoulder joint or the elbow joint, or my knee joint swelled up till it reminded me of my grandmother's who was struggled with swelling and things in my grandmother's leg. I remember having my son, who was little at the time, said, just go out and get me like a good strong stick that I can use to get around, for kind of like a crutch at the time. A cane at the
Oh
time.
my God.
Because it would just hit you all of a sudden, just wake up that way.
So like
Yeah.
day
And
by
it
day,
just hit,
you would have like one day you'd be fine and the next day your joints would really hurt.
yeah, to the point of being debilitating. Like, man, I can't even walk. I just get out of my bed and go to the bathroom. It's so bad. So it would move from joint to joint. I had the low grade fever. That was one of the first signs, the low grade fever continually. It was just dropping weight consistently because I had no desire to eat. And then I got Bell's palsy. So this half of my face was paralyzed. I would have to tape my eyes shut at night because it wouldn't naturally blink and stay shut.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
I'm trying to think here at what point I decided to,
Well, I mean, clearly it seems like you had a lot of obvious symptoms of Lyme disease. So you probably
yeah,
wanted to at least go to the doctor and see like, hey, what do you suggest about this, right?
yeah. And at that time, yeah, it was new. It was that would have been 92, in 1992. So they were kind of guessing around, I think, with it. And thankfully, when I would go and the doctor would see the bullseye rash, he wouldn't do any blood tests or anything. He knew that rash is the significant indicator of Lyme disease. Because of the first two of my sons who got it, I also took them to the doctor. And I'm trying to think if he put him on. I don't even remember. I don't think he suggested something for them because I don't remember giving them something for it. But he said, I think you should take your son up to Duluth because it could be children's arthritis. And that mama intuition, I was like, this is not children's arthritis.
Mm-hmm.
So I took him home and started doing with him kind of some of the things that I had been doing.
So for your own experience, you said you went to the doctor, they gave you penicillin, and you seemed better for a little bit, but then after a couple months, the symptoms started to come back?
They did, yeah. And so I proceeded to wean my baby. And I just thought, I had heard that we had a friend at that time who was very much into fasting and knew a lot of the benefits of it. And I had done some fasting, I think at that time I had done a week fast just to see if I could do it. And I did some just single day fasting. And so I thought, I had heard from him that a 21-day fast rejuvenates the whole nervous system. And at that time, it was my understanding that the Lyme disease affects the nervous system. So I thought, I'm going to wean my baby and I'm going to go into a 21-day fast, just a water fast, just drink distilled water.
Oh my goodness. Wait, can I just ask a follow-up question here? So you had 3 babies at this time, you're feeling this sick, and then you decided to try to do a 21-day water-only fast. I mean, you are incredible. I don't know how you even consider doing that.
So I tell people that's how thrifty I was. I'm like, yeah, I'm not spending a bunch of extra money on doctors. I'll save money by not eating, actually.
Oh yeah, so gosh. I had one other quick follow-up question before you go into talking about the fast is, how did you think that it was related to your nervous system? Who told you that, or how did you think that at the time? Because I've heard recently the theory could be shifting back in that direction.
I don't know. I must have heard something. And so many of the natural cures that I've tried, it's just like I've heard something, or I just have this sense, like this sixth sense. And it's one thing that I love about pursuing natural healing. And I thought this recently we have outsourced our wisdom continually, almost in every area. We go to the therapists, to the counselors, to the doctors, to the psychiatrists, to, somebody out there. And so we're always asking out there when the wisdom for ourselves is right inside here. If you would pay attention to that mama intuition that you have for your children, but that's there for you too. And so a lot of times that's what I've listened to, and it has always steered me right. So I don't know if it was partly that, but I think I had heard just a little tidbit somewhere, and I hardly knew anything about the nervous system at that time at all. I didn't know anything. Let's put it that way. So I decided to do the 21-day fast. I weaned my baby and began that. So I had a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 5-year-old at that time. And I'm not going to lie, it was grueling because you have the worst part to me about the fasting, long-term fasting is a lengthy fast, is the lethargy that you feel, the lack of energy more than not having the food. It's just the lack of energy day after day after day. So I'd just be dragging, sweeping the floor. But I would make, 3 meals a day for everybody else. But the interesting thing was, so I'd been struggling with the Lyme disease probably for a year at that time. When I went into the fast, one day, 24 hours later, all my symptoms were gone. So it worked just like the penicillin. The penicillin, one day, all my symptoms were gone for 3 months, and then they came back. When I fasted, one day, and all my symptoms were gone. But this time, it lasted for 9 months. For 9 months after the 21-day fast, I had no Lyme disease symptoms. And then it came back again, and it came back strong in my knee, really bad. By that time, I think I was nursing again, and I thought, when I'm done nursing this baby, I will go into another 21-day fast. But this time, I'm going to maintain it by doing a 1-day fast a week and maintain it. And so I did that. I weaned the next baby and just went directly into a fast when I weaned her. Kind of dried me up naturally. And then I maintained what that fast did in my body and did a 1-day fast a week for, I don't know, a couple months maybe. And I have never had another symptom since then. So that was in 1994. So
oh my goodness. I am like getting shivers listening to your story. That is just incredible. Like, first of all, the wisdom of listening to your own body, and then the fortitude you had. Like, I'm not going to lie. I didn't know, maybe I'm super ignorant here, but I didn't know that humans would be fine running around and doing things and going for 21 days without food, just water. I didn't even know that that's a thing you could do.
Yeah. I kind of was in a challenge myself mode there as far as fasting goes. And I thought, I want to see if I can do 4 weeks. So I actually went, and my husband was going to try the 21-day fast because he had never done that before. And it was so healing to my body. And so he just wanted to do it to be proactive with his health. So I thought, well, I'm going to do it for the month of February, do 28 days, see if I can do 4 weeks and how I do with that. My husband ended up having to go up into the wilderness in northern Minnesota. By this time, we lived in Wisconsin and help his parents way off grid. And so we had to break it a few days early so that he would have enough energy for that. So it ended up being a 25-day fast. And I remember saying, it was the most grueling experience of my life because of the low energy. It's just gets to you after a while. But the results of it, what's amazing about fasting, there is a term, and I can't think of it right now, a term that, and what it explains is that when you're fasting, your body automatically goes to the most pertinent thing that you have that needs to be healed and puts the energy there. And because you're not eating, it's not having to focus on digesting food and all those things. It can go purely to cleaning your body, cleansing it, and healing it. And so its main focus is that. And so I just planned on laying low, meaning not doing a lot of running around and socializing and all that. This was my time to heal. So that's, if I don't know what is wrong, it's something like I have a symptom of something, that will be my go-to. I will just go on a fast because my body does know what is wrong and it will go to it and will heal it. And so it's pretty amazing. It's when our dog got ill, I think he had Lyme disease because he had Lyme disease, achy in the joints. What do? They hunker down. They hunker down and they don't eat and they just wait and let their body rest and fast. Kids naturally do that. When they're sick, they don't want to eat. Our body, if we'd listen to it, instead of going and having to eat chicken noodle soup to get better and keep up our strength, realize that no, when your body is telling you, I don't want food, it has a repulsion to it, listen to it. It's trying to heal and it does not want that for right now. And then when it's ready, you'll have that desire come back and it's time to get strong again.
Wow. So wise. And that's actually a good transition into talking a bit about your children and when they had Lyme disease. You weren't going to put your kids on a 21-day water fast. So what did you think that you would do when you found out that they had Lyme disease? And how did you figure out a solution that I know you've said has actually worked for, I think, 9 out of 12 of your children, right?
Right. With the first ones that had it, I had that because I knew that fasting helped. For one, I kept them off sugar, kept them off the sweets, and we ate pretty wholesome as it was, but just kept them off that. And if they wanted to fast and not eat, have a repulsion, I just let them do that. I let them lay low and just follow their body's instincts of sleeping a lot, just laying on the couch. If they were, saw their siblings eating and then they think that they want some, I would go ahead and butter some toast for them and put it to them, and they take like one little bite and they realize, I guess I don't, I don't want it. And so what I started doing is incorporating with them to do a 1 day a week fast. So what we would do, we do it as a family and we would do it breakfast to breakfast. So a 24-hour fast. So we would eat breakfast and then I would have some kind of craft or something to kind of occupy them during the day, and they knew what we were doing and why. And then we go to bed early, and then in the morning they'd wake up and they could eat again. They were pretty lethargic, and kind of just in the morning, just kind of laying around, but that was the one thing I did with them, kept them off sugar, and then did this 1 day a week fast. As time went on, and I had more children, and some of them were getting Lyme disease, and I was learning more natural cures, I did this instead. I didn't turn to the fasting. That's a little more grueling. They could do it. And because they were sick and their body kind of wanted it, but I had the other kids also doing it with us, I knew it would be healthy for them. And they really didn't fuss and complain about it. It was kind of amazing, I guess, now as I'm talking about it and thinking back. Willingly kind of gathering around that one that was ailing to jointly support them in what they were doing to heal. But I learned that 2 things with the later ones, children that I had that came down with Lyme disease. I'd keep them off sugar, let them fast, do those things if they wanted to, if their body was wanting that, rest a lot. But then I learned that colloidal silver is a natural antibiotic. So I would give them, maybe 2 teaspoons, like 3 times a day, morning, noon, nighttime, maybe 4. And then I would also, when I gave them that, I would give them bovine colostrum. So bovine colostrum is that beginning milk that a mother cow gives to her calf. And it's the most similar, is my understanding, to a human colostrum. And it's loaded with natural things that boost your immune system. So it tastes like dry milk powder. Some brands are better than others. As I would buy different brands, my kids would be like, yeah, this one doesn't taste very good. The one that I love, it's expensive, but it's very high grade. They make it with the least amount of heat that, with the regulations they have in making it, that they can go down to. But it's delicious. It's Heart and Soil is the brand of that. So between the colloidal silver natural antibiotic, which tastes like water, these two things are super simple for treating children for multiple things. These have been my go-tos. So for the Lyme disease, so colloidal silver and then the bovine colostrum. I would just put that on a spoon and they loved eating it. Otherwise, it's super simple to mix into some yogurt or something like that. And then
Wow.
I would, as I'd see them kind of the symptoms leaving their body, which maybe would take a couple weeks, then I would start backing off on giving those things to them. And then generally they would have a flare up again. So I would bring back the regular dosages of the colloidal silver and the bovine colostrum, start it up again. And then as the symptoms waned, I'd slack off on it. And usually after that, they were good to go. And like I said, seem to have a natural immunity now to the Lyme disease. So those are the two things that with my children in healing different things. One thing is a natural antibiotic and the other as a immune system builder.
Wow. Incredible. And you're saying with the colloidal silver, you did 1 to 2 teaspoons 3 or 4 times a day?
Yeah, probably 2 teaspoons. Yeah, just 3 to 4 times a day. If you know me, I've called myself Wing It Mom because I'm just like kind of, here you go, here you go. And I don't measure when I cook or anything. And so, but I just take one of those spoons, a teaspoon or a tablespoon and pour some on it and give it to them. And I have my own colloidal silver maker. My daughter was saying recently that she was talking to somebody who said there's different grades of colloidal silver and some colloidal silver will, and I've wondered this, will kill off the good bacteria also. But there are grades of colloidal silver that are really good that don't do that. And because I'd wondered about that, I started using the colloidal silver a little more carefully, not quite as freely, and just when the kids really needed it. And for Lyme disease, they really needed it. So I don't know, that's something new to me, but something people could look into. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly the value in collecting these stories is sometimes when we're experimenting, we may not know some of the risks or we just avoided them. And turns out it was actually really beneficial. So it's good that you tried that and that it's valuable to collect that information that your children healed and were fine and had no bad side effects from using the colloidal silver. So that's extremely valuable to hear and share that, I think.
Yeah. And they healed probably within a 3-month period. My husband and I doing different things, probably fully to get it out of our system, was 2 years. So it doesn't mean that we were struggling continually for 2 years, but be good and then have a flare up. And it took about 2 years to finally fully get on the other side where we weren't having any more flare ups happening. They tend to, the spirochetes, which are the little weevils or whatever it is inside of you, tend to go to the joint where there's less blood flow, and they lay their eggs there, and every month they spring a new batch of them. And for my husband, he had a really severe case of Lyme disease, and that was in 2010, and he could feel it. Every month he could feel like this new outbreak happening, but it was getting less and less and less as he was doing his natural things. So, and I can share what he did.
Wow.
I did the fasting. My kids did those simple cures, but he needed a lot more. I think the strain of Lyme disease that he had is called auriculosis, where the bullseye rashes were bruises on his body, actually bullseye bruises. And he was just in a lot of pain.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I had one follow-up question for your kids. So you said initially when they had these symptoms, you would give them the bovine colostrum and the colloidal silver for, was it like a few weeks and then their symptoms faded away and then they came back after maybe a month or two, and then after the second round of a few weeks, it faded away again? Is that what the time frame looked like?
Yeah, like that. So treated them for maybe 2 to 3 weeks with those two things, keeping them off sugar, keeping their and letting them follow their body's instincts as far as rest or not eating, making sure they're getting plenty of water. We have good well water, so can give that to them. Yeah, and usually one flare up, and then I'd start those things again, and so over like 3, maybe 4 months, they'd be good to go, and the symptoms wouldn't come back anymore.
Wow. Incredible. And yes, I would love to hear the story of your husband, because after you had gone through it, done a grueling 21-day fast, your kids had gone through it, then he came down with, it sounds like a very severe version of Lyme disease, right?
Right. And so he immediately went into a fast. And I think around the 9th, 10th day, he wasn't getting any relief. And I think we both concluded this. He was the one who came up with the theory that the reason why it immediately affected me is because I had already been battling the Lyme disease for like a year. And so my body was already naturally getting its own antibodies, warding and fighting it off. And so when I went into a fast, it like turbocharged what my body was already doing and trying to conquer it. Whereas he was doing it right from the get-go. His body, the Lyme disease in his body was completely new and having to come up with what it needed to fight the Lyme disease off. So
makes sense.
So he tried different things, garlic and lemon combined, staying off the sugar. I think he did some colloidal silver, and just it was not knocking it for him. It was so severe. Every night he would just break out into just a pool of sweat as his fever would build and build and build and then break and build and build. So it was just going on and on. And it got to the point where his heart was beating so slow in the 40 some beats per minute. Each time he'd stand up, he would have to like gather himself together because everything would start blacking out and hold himself before he could take his first step and walk. At the store shopping, he'd have to have a grocery cart just to keep him stabilized and from fainting, blacking out. So he said to me one day, he said, I think I'm going to have to go do the antibiotics. Because what was happening was, he told me later, he said, I was actually thinking of writing you my last goodbye letter, because he just didn't know if he was going to make it through. His heart would all of a sudden just stop and everything would just like start closing in on him. And then it would start beating again. He'd come to. And so that's when he said, I think I'm just going to have to break down the stubbornness of natural healing and do the antibiotics. But he said, I want to try one more thing. And we knew a person who ran a biofeedback machine, which heals through frequencies. And she had used it for her son, who had a severe case of Lyme disease. He said, I'm going to call Liddy and I'm going to try some sessions with her. And so he called her and she said, before you do that, she said, I want you to do a 3-way call with me with a man who has healing rocks and just see what you think. See if that might help. And so he did the 3-way call, decided to buy the package. It was a mud pack, smashed crushed rocks into sand that you sleep on. It was some green rocks and then a stronger gray rock and a water rock. And that package was $500, last you for the rest of your life, because those rocks carry that it has naturally occurring radiation in it. And the radiation is low level. It affects your cells in such a way that it breaks them down slightly like a workout would. And then your cells build up stronger. This is my understanding of it. It's called hormesis.
Oh my goodness.
Radiation hormesis. And so he said, I'll give it a try. Jay, the owner, felt that it would help him and be beneficial. So we bought the package and he just took the pennant. I brought it with me. Just looks really ordinary. You can see there. And he took it and he just put it around his neck. And so the rock would lay right over his heart area. And within 20 minutes of wearing that rock, he felt his heart just start picking up the pace. And then it would die down, and then it would pick up, and then it would die down. And he was a little concerned, but he said it was the first time, and he didn't know how long he was able to just get up and walk, not, start blacking out or anything. But it wasn't holding steady. So he called the owner. It was a small company, and it still is actually. And he called the owner. Jay and just asked him about it. And Jay just so confidently said, just hang in there. Your body, your heart is finding its rhythm. It's going to be okay. And it did. That was the end of it. It began beating well. He slept on the mud pack each night. He put the water rock, which water container, and that structures the water so that your body is more easily able to hydrate. It's more cleansing to your body, is my understanding also. And he just continued wearing the rock. And that was the healing part of what it had done to his heart. He also, though, had so much pain in his joints, and it wasn't taking care of that part of it all over his joints. Now, it might have if he could have wore rocks on all his joints. But somebody suggested this to him. You know, and so this is what I tell people too, as far as natural cures. When you have questions that you put out there to God and the whole universe, God wants to answer those questions. And so the things that come to you, either intuitively or just like randomly come your way, is amazing if you will give it opportunity and trust the process of life. Somebody suggested at that time that he try. Yeah, it's amazing. Somebody suggested he try the hydrogen peroxide therapy. Gave us some pieces of paper, a pamphlet that were photocopied from some book. And we didn't know at the time, but he took it and he thought, okay, let's try it. It costs what? So like $30 for a pint of food grade, 35% food grade hydrogen peroxide. So we got some, and I mean, that lasts a long time because you use so little of it. It's very potent. You don't want it to get on your skin. It will burn it. If you do, you just wash it off. But handle it carefully. And the process was a 21-day process where I did it with him just to be proactive with my health. You drop 1 drop of hydrogen peroxide, that 35%, in your water, distilled water, and you do that 3 times a day on an empty stomach, morning, noon, night. And then second day, 2 drops, 3 times a day, and you increase it by 1 drop till you're doing 21 drops. And then you go backwards, 20 drops, 19 drops. So it's an over 40-day protocol. But in doing that healed all his pain that he was feeling, just aching all over his body and in his joints. The theory of that is that it is oxygenating your body, and disease has a hard time living in a well oxygenated body. As time has passed, we realized, these things that we got in 2010 that were photocopied are from the book, The 1 Minute Miracle. And since that has been updated in 2020 or 2021, since COVID, called The 1 Minute Cure. Really interesting book on that hydrogen peroxide therapy. His is a 25-day protocol. We did 21-day. And so I did that again in January. I hadn't done it since 2010. I read The 1 Minute Cure, and I thought, you know what? I should do that again to be proactive with my health. So in January, I went ahead and did the 50-day. Well, he starts at 3 drops, so it's about a 47-day protocol. And yeah, people ask how you feel after this. I say, well, I'm not doing it because I'm sick, so it's not like I see a dramatic change. But these are the things that you want to do so that you don't get sick. And like the fasting, did I say this earlier? My husband would say, it's when you do some of these protocols and cleanses, you are deciding when you're going to be sick, meaning you don't feel the best as you're doing some of these because your body is cleansing toxins, but you're prepared. You know what it's about. My body is cleansing. And so during the fasting, that's my time. I'm not going to feel weak. I'm going to feel low energy, but my body is cleansing. And instead of just going along doing nothing and you get the toxic overload happen in your body, and now while you're on vacation or the holidays or whatever, now you're sick because your body says we got to get rid of this junk that you got going on. So you're kind of planning when you're going to be sick, but you're not sick. You're just doing cleansing so that you don't get sick.
Yeah, incredible stories. So follow-up question on the hydrogen peroxide therapy. What does that taste like? What does that feel like? And you said it has to be in distilled water, right?
Right. Because it can react to, like even in well water, can react to the minerals and things like that. And so you want to do it on an empty stomach. And that book, The 1 Minute Cure, explains all the reasons why around that. So when you're doing the beginning of the protocol, it's not that bad because one drop in a 8-ounce glass of water is hardly recognizable. But by the time you get to 15, 20, some people cannot finish the protocol because it's just so strong. I have built up such a strong mindset, I think, that even though something is awful tasting, it's like, I'm doing it. I'm going to do it. It's going to help me. And so I can weather through that. It could be too, though, that I've been doing things like this since I was a teenager. So I don't have the toxic overload that other people have. So when they're doing the protocols, a lot of dumping is happening. And that could be part of why some people just I can't. And so they should back off because you don't want to dump too much at one time. Do it to the capacity that, again, intuitively you feel in your body, yeah, I need to back off. And so they might do 10 drops for a while instead of building up the amount that they're taking. But I can't even describe the taste.
That makes
you
sense.
have to do it. I guess you have to do it. It's just
okay. This concept of listening to your body, I think, is so valuable. And I've heard it across so many people's stories that when you finally get in tune with your body, that's when you can finally heal and that you kind of know what your body needs. And I was curious to follow up also on what we had talked about, the fasts that you did in the past. How would you know, do you think, if your body was getting to a point that it couldn't tolerate going without food more? When you got to 21 days, what would prevent you from going to 40 days? How do you know when it's too much and it actually could get dangerous for yourself? What do you think?
There are some people, Jesus talks in the Bible going 40 days without food. And I know somebody who's gone 40 days. I've heard this theory that you know when you need to eat again when true hunger, you'll feel true hunger, not just oh, that'd be nice to eat. Oh, that looks so good. But there's a sensation that your body has that it's true hunger. I need to eat. My body needs to eat. But it's amazing how long a body can go and just pull from the reserves. Last fall, so last September, I had an onset of blurry vision, double vision, and it would not stop. And I had some of this before and dealt with it in different ways. And it was concerning to me. It didn't. Before in the past, it would pass, but this time it wasn't. I woke up the next morning and it was still doing this. It was debilitating. I couldn't focus on anything. And so I thought, well, I have heard that a 7-day fast rejuvenates your eyes. 11 days rejuvenates your ears. And so I thought, I'm going to do a 7-day fast. So last September, it happened to be a beautiful week in Wisconsin, just sunny, warm. So because I couldn't really do anything, I decided to go into the fast and I just laid out in the sun. The sun was low enough in the sky that I could lay there for hours and not burn. And so I laid on the earth to ground, because that's another thing I'm a big believer in, is healing, the earth's energy, and then the sunlight. And I fasted, laid on the earth and in the sunshine. And every day my vision got better and better and better till the 7th day. It was all gone and it was good, and it's been good since. Again,
wow.
Your body knows what to do, but that's a way to rejuvenate your eyes and your ears. I have noticed when I did the 21-day fast, and I didn't think about what day it was, but I remember in the fast at one point everything was louder. Everything was louder, and I wonder if it was around the 11th day when in the fast my ears had rejuvenated, and it's just I have to tell my kids, quiet, please be quiet.
Oh my gosh. I still, I have 2 kids and, I grew up in a family of 4. I just can't believe that you did these fasts, which I didn't even know people could do, with 3 little kids running around. And then you had 12 kids. You are just such an inspiring person. I really can't believe it. I appreciate you sharing all of this. Incredible.
Yeah, thank you. Strong will that I have that got me in a lot of trouble when I was little. Got a lot of spankings for my strong will, but in my adult years, that has served me so well in doing the things like the 21-day fast, just determined I will do this. So, yeah.
Wow. On that topic, I have one completely unrelated, well, not completely unrelated, but a bit of a side topic question. And that is, you generally fed your kids and your family pretty whole foods, healthy foods, I imagine, because you were trying to reduce sugar and all of this stuff. How did you manage to prepare that much food 3 times a day to feed your family that's healthy and whole foods? That just seems like so much work.
I didn't overthink it. I was raised by a mom who was a homemaker, stayed at home, and my dad went to work. So it was very much in my mind when I got married that this is my job. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to raise the kids. I'm going to school them. I'm going to cook all the meals, give all the baths. I didn't expect my husband to do those things. We would parent them together, be the parents, but he was going to be the provider role. And so it was on a wood cook stove and with wood heat and with an outhouse and all those things because we were living off grid until 2006, actually. 2010, we did bring electricity back because my husband wanted buffalo and we needed stronger fences and things, but we weren't set up for it, but we did get a refrigerator in 2000. But basically off grid in an outhouse until 2006. I think I was able to do it all because I didn't overthink it and I just believed I could. I believed I could. And so I just every day got up with that mindset and didn't think anything of it. And I almost wonder if women today, and I attribute it to social media. I grew up with my dad, went to work and provided for us and came home and was a dad and just kind of, did some fun things with me, but didn't do those practical things. So I think a lot of it was just my mindset that I can do this. I will do it. But I also, as far as the practical of meals, as time went on, I made my meals basic. You have so many people with different tastes. So I did basic things that were fairly healthy. And so I had like a dozen meals that were fairly healthy. We'd have to make the salad from the garden or buy organic greens or something. I made my own bread. So we'd have salad, bread. I had some vegetable usually, and then a main dish. So it might be spaghetti, it might be tacos, it might be homemade pizza, it might be just a roast or chicken or chili, but things that nobody would complain because it didn't have a bunch of mushrooms and it didn't, all these things that little kids don't like. And then I always had healthy desserts. So I just rotated those meals, and by the time I had 12 kids, I could whip together that 4-course meal in probably 45 minutes because I had just gotten to be such a pattern. And I don't sit there and measure. I know the measurements in my head. And the treats that I have are wholesome enough that if my kids snack on them, it's okay because it's got good stuff in them. So I would have them on the counter for them to that and fruit for them to snack on. As they got older, they start making their own choices and they want sugar and things, but then that becomes on them. But I'm going to raise them with healthy treats, So, and it's not that they always had that. We did go to Dairy Queen and, here and there, but not a lot of that.
Like the basis is very healthy and regular, and then you can have a few exceptions here and there, and your body can handle it fine.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what are some of those healthy treats that you offered your kids?
The one standby is that I've made since before I even had children is no bakes. And they are just, I think it's like a cup of peanut butter, 3/4 cup honey, dry milk. And you can get really good whole milk, I think even organic dry milk online. And you mix those together until it's a consistency of, like Play-Doh. Roll it into a ball. But I also put, my one luxury is the dark chocolate, Hershey's dark chocolate chips. And I put those in there too and roll them into a ball. So those are the peanut butter no bakes that my kids will probably never forget. So I usually had a container of those. Otherwise I would make, healthy chocolate chip cookies, but I started using the coconut sugar. I cooked a lot with honey at the beginning and now have steered over to coconut sugar because it's low glycemic and it's delicious. You can pretty much replace any recipe I find with coconut sugar, replace the white sugar with that.
I'm so curious also. So it sounds like you had regular wheat bread and dairy and meat and all of these things in your diet. And yet you were able to, cure yourself and your children from Lyme disease. And I'm sure other ailments throughout childhood, as you have, shared in the PDFs, which I will again mention at the end of the podcast too and share. But you didn't really make major diet alterations, right? You ate a pretty standard diet. And then when someone was sick, by standard, I mean, you weren't cutting out wheat, cutting out dairy, cutting out meat. I know it was healthy, whole foods. And so it seems like, I'm kind of asking you this, does it seem like if you are sick and you just back away from the sugar and use some of these healthy protocols for a short time, in your experience, does it seem like you can kind of go back to that regular diet and be fine?
Yeah, there are so many. I don't remember growing up, everybody being allergic to something. So what has changed between when I was young and now having my kids and raising them? The vaccinations is one of them. They have upped. I was vaccinated, but they have upped so many vaccinations in children and the overload of antibiotics that they dole out from very little from every earache that kids have. I have never given my kids antibiotics. I have never had antibiotics, and my kids have never been vaccinated. So I had home births. It was just, again, it wasn't that I was so smart. It was just a hassle. And I didn't want to poke my babies and see them cry. So I never did vaccinate them. Looking back, I'm really thankful. None of them wear glasses. None of them have allergies. They're just so strong and healthy as adults now. My last one, all of them, 11 are adults. My youngest is going to be 17 in September. And so they haven't had the wheat allergies, and wouldn't even come to my mind that was a problem, I guess. But we did grow our own things in the garden many of the years, and we had our own beef that we raised. We had raw milk. We had our own cows, and when we didn't have cows, there was a source of raw milk close by. And so they were good, solid foods that we were getting. I wasn't just going and running to the store and getting homogenized, pasteurized milk. And so a lot of my kids' health and not having allergies, I think, is due to that. And I guess I just never even thought that if they were sick, that it was something related to that. But they haven't had serious things wrong with them either. So anyways, I think the allergies are due to a lot more things than people are connecting the dots to.
Yeah, a lot of blame goes to the wheat and the dairy, but it sounds like if you have fresh wheat bread and fresh dairy and otherwise a lot of fresh, healthy vegetables, and then you use certain things in moderation when you're sick, it sounds like maybe they are not the culprits after all, at least in your and your family's experience.
Yeah, and as time went on, it wasn't, again, I don't want to give the impression that let's say, I would have been married to Nathan 40 years this year. So it wasn't like for 40 years we've just been this hardcore healthy family. We lived off grid, and so we were self-sustaining. So a lot of just our natural lifestyle was that way. But gradually, as we moved to Wisconsin and then moved off of our land to the home I'm in now, which is just 3 miles around the corner, we didn't have our cows anymore. Where I am now, there really isn't a good place for a garden, so I don't have the garden. So a lot of those things I haven't had all the time. And we did have, like I said, we would, I'd bring home donuts occasionally and all, those kind of things. And it seemed like more and more, as my kids got older, they wanted those things and they were getting them. And I ease up and let them start making their choices anyways. So I really do think that a lot of health is due to those things, your diet, your exercise, the food choices. But I think a lot of the health, even attributing to allergies, is the environment of the home. If the home is a safe place, if the home has peace and harmony in there, it's going to really contribute to your child's overall well-being of what they are chronically carrying and what door is opening up to health issues or not. So I do think that is a huge part of my children's, probably the huger part than just the wholesome foods and things, is the atmosphere of our home. My husband and I had harmony, and I made peace a priority.
That's incredible. Fully agree. That is extremely important. I want to make sure we have time to discuss the gallbladder flush that you've done recently and that you suggested talking about, because I am really curious about that as well. I've heard about that kind of thing before. And I guess, first of all, I would love to know from your experience, how do you know you even need that or that you should do that? Like, what symptoms have you experienced that inspired you to try a gallbladder flush?
They say pretty much everybody has some gallstones. Just there are the ones that have so much that it begins causing them problems. So to be proactive with your health, you probably will have stones to a greater or lesser extent. And from my understanding, the gallbladder flush is also cleansing your liver. So it's doing both your liver and your gallbladder. The gallbladder is a little pear-shaped organ underneath your liver, and the liver makes bile. It shoots bile into your gallbladder. Your gallbladder condenses it, I believe, like 4 times the density. And then as you're eating, the small intestine signals the gallbladder that it needs bile to help digestion. So the gallbladder will shoot the bile into the small intestine to help digest fats in particular, and helps absorbing fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K, I think it is. And so we're led to believe that, oh, you don't need your gallbladder, you'll be fine. And you can live without your gallbladder. You can live without your lymph nodes and things, but your body isn't going to operate at its prime. When you take that gallbladder out, your liver is now just constantly dripping bile, whether it's just dripping into your system or dripping it into the small intestine, I'm not sure. But I didn't understand all that about the gallbladder. It was when I was 18 and I went to the iridologist who looked in my eyes, and he was trying to help me detoxify what he could see my body was overloaded with. He said, "You're going to hate me, but I'm going to have you flush your gallbladder." and, so he just gave me the quick recipe to do it, had me fast the day of the gallbladder flush. And it's basically taking a tablespoon of Epsom salt at 6 o'clock in an 8-ounce glass of water, or 6 ounce, and then do it again, another tablespoon at 8 o'clock. And then at 10 o'clock, you drink down. And his recipe was a little different than what I do now. His involved 2 cups of olive oil and 1 cup of lemon juice. What I do now is a cup of olive oil with a half a cup of lemon juice. Instead of done in little bits over 2 hours like he had me do, I shake it and I drink it right down. And then go to bed, lay on my right side, and then in the morning do a tablespoon of Epsom salt again, 2 hours later, another tablespoon, and it's done. And you should be flushing the gallstones that day. So I did that at 18, and I woke up and started flushing these stones out. And I think by the end of the day, I had flushed out probably 2 cups of gallstones at 18 years old.
Oh my God. You see them?
Yeah. Do you want me to? Because I just did this last week. I've since 18, I have done it. I actually didn't do it again till I was 36, and I didn't get out that much. Maybe a cup, maybe. And I've just kind of, to be proactive with my health, have done it every few years. And I have this book that I was kind of brushing up on called The Liver and Gallbladder Miracle Cleanse. And I didn't know that there was actually a book about it till just in the recent years. And in reading it and brushing up on it, it said that a prime day to do it is March 30th or June 30th. It gives its reasons in the book for that. Well, it was coming up to June 30th, which was this past week, and I thought, well, I should do it right now. So I got my ingredients, my lemon juice and organic lemons and high-grade olive oil, and did that on Tuesday evening of this week. And so Wednesday I was flushing, and I brought them with me if you want to see them. If you're squeamish, I say. If you're
Yes, I do.
Time to close your and these are the biggest stones I have passed, but they're green in color. Let me see. Oh, there we go. They're green in color, kind of greenish, yellowish.
Oh my
and so
gosh.
The next day, these are the biggest ones I have passed in all my years of doing it. Put my finger next to it so you can kind of get perspective of how big they are. But they break up.
What is a gallstone?
It probably explains it all now. I guess I can't.
I'll read the book. I'll read the book.
I'm sure some of it is bile and just congested junk. Yeah, collected together. And what those ingredients that you're taking in are softening and breaking the stones up and then causing your gallbladder to like
Got it.
convulse, to push them out. And so
Wow.
I just know that I know when I did it at 18, it did cleanse my body so that my cycle came back after the other protocols he had me do. And also, I have felt such like energy lifts after them, like my skin looks better after doing one of them. You'll get different varying experiences afterwards, results. So in the book, it'll say, and I've done this too, to do a cleanse and then like 3 weeks later, do it again because it's moving stuff, but maybe some of it still didn't move all the way out. So in doing it again, you'll push them further out. So I've done that too. It's not the most fun. I mean, I think this time, and maybe I do this every time, but when I did it on Tuesday night, I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that again. It's just, I don't know if you've tried to chug oil, but you can't chug oil. It just whoop, whoop, at its own small, slow pace. But then when I get the results and I see it, and I'm like, man, I'm so glad. I haven't been to the doctor since Lyme disease when I was 26 for any of my pregnancies,
Oh my God.
for anything, have just done natural cures. And so I really believe it's contributed to not needing to go to, in part, doing the hydrogen peroxide therapy, doing the gallbladder flush, doing the fasting, the proactive things that keep your body clean, keep your organs operating. I do a lot of other cleanses from a company called D-Herbs that targets your kidneys, your liver, your colon, whole body cleanses. So we tune up our cars and we do oil changes in our cars and things and maintain them. And then we forget that our body is the system that needs to be cleansed. So this gallbladder cleanse is very much like doing an oil change on your car, is what I feel like, and cleansing out your gallbladder and liver.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I'm just fascinated to hear that and then actually see them because I've read about this kind of thing before and I was like, is it not going to be good for me? Is it really going to work? And then to hear you actually doing it, and same with the fasts, to hear from someone who's actually done it and it actually worked and you're fine, it's not that fun, but you're fine, I think is so empowering and inspiring for other people. It may encourage other people to try these things as well. Cause it's one thing to read it in a book and you're like, I don't know, but then to hear someone who did it and it worked, that is just really amazing to hear.
Yeah. A friend of ours, his daughter-in-law had in her family, it kind of ran in her family and her genetics to have gallbladder issues. And so he contacted me and said, what was that gallbladder flush you did? He said, I want to give it to my daughter-in-law because they're threatening to do surgery for her to remove the gallbladder. So I gave it to him and she did it and was able to preserve her gallbladder and not need the surgery in doing that. So everybody's body is different. And I give my experience, but and my results. I really tell people tune into your own body because again, I've been kind of like a granola girl. So I don't have the toxic overload I feel like that other people have or the issues. I haven't been on I'm not on any pharmaceuticals. I haven't been on any of those things. So I'm able to do more of the natural things. I was going to say, I haven't even, a lot of people with the fasting, they can't do is because they're addicted to coffee in the morning and wine at night, one or the other or both. I purposely did not get used to coffee either. I just didn't want to be addicted. The onset of why I didn't want to have something to feel good. I wanted to just wake up in the morning and feel good. And if I'm tired, go to sleep, not do coffee, energy drinks. And I'm really thankful I've done that now that I know the taxing of your adrenals and things that coffee does. But even that can make it really hard for people to do things, cleanses and fasts.
Absolutely. You are so wise, so inspiring. There's so many things that I want to quote from this podcast afterwards. I really, really appreciate you sharing everything. And I want to bring up to everyone listening that Renee and her daughter Ivory have shared a PDF with a lot of these solutions in it, as well as many others, all the tips and tricks that they have used over the years. And I will link to that PDF or where you can actually get that when I share the podcast as well. I have it myself, and I was reading through it and sharing it with my sisters who have kids. And I just think it's so inspiring and helpful and really useful. And hearing that these things have worked for you really encourages me to try them more, because I think a lot of people think that natural solutions might not work. They might not be that powerful. They might not be that effective. And that's partly because we don't hear that from the voices of authority from doctors. And that's partly because there's not research done on some of these things, like a gallbladder flush. They just say, oh, just have a surgery. But it's not that it doesn't work, that we're missing the information, we're missing the research, the testing. And I think it's a real shame, because we don't need to necessarily go to antibiotics and surgery if we just bring more of this information to light, and hopefully more data behind it in the near future, which is a huge impetus behind this podcast as well. So thank you so, so much for sharing everything that you've shared. And is there anything else that you wanted to share? Any other insights or resources?
Just to say, in that PDF, my hope in that PDF of what I put in that, my daughter and I, is that I'm giving you all the resources of the books that I use and turn to when I'm wondering what I have and what to do. I started out my whole process of being my own doctor, so to speak, with these two books from way back. I think they were written maybe in the 70s. Let's Eat Right to Keep Fit and Back to Eating. One deals with vitamins and one with herbs. And I would just diagnose with my American Medical Association book and then locate what I think we're dealing with. And then I would turn to my herbs and things. So in this PDF, I'm giving you my updated resources of what I really value so that I can know what I'm dealing with and what is the best natural way. What are my options to deal with it? And the whole PDF is geared around holistic healing. So I'm also going to deal with healing your emotions too. What are the emotional connections to the physical illness? I've used that with my children, with the different things that they've had to help them clear their emotions. It helps me to tune into my kids too and what they're dealing with on a soul emotional level. So that's the idea of the PDF, to help you get on that path of having resources to be able to cure yourself with natural things. God has so much in the universe.
Absolutely. And one of the key things that you've mentioned, the key concepts or principles that you've kind of just realized on your own and from your own inner strength, is only you can heal yourself. Is you need to take the initiative to figure out, to listen to your body and learn things and not be dependent on listening to someone else telling you what needs to be done. And that mindset of being proactive, of wanting to learn, wanting to try things, I think is one of the most powerful things that you have, because that allows you to do all of these things and for them to even give them a chance of working. And in many cases, it sounds like it really did work.
Yeah. And another thing, if you go on Google, they will debunk almost every natural cure that there is, meaning put fear tactics out there. And I've given natural cures to people before, and then they tell me they're scared. And so I start Googling it like they did. And like, no wonder they're scared. Look at everything it's saying. And so we did natural cures for my mom with her 4th-stage lung cancer. And everything we did that helped her heal, I went on Google to the quackery list, and every one of those natural cures we did was on that quackery list. So don't be scared. Don't brush everything off, but listen to, again, more to your natural intuition than Google, to what is, I tend to be a kind of, both my husband and I, go for it come what may, and not afraid to try new things. But I also tune into, the inner voice that is saying to, yeah, hold off. Yeah, maybe not. Quit that. Start something new. Listen to that. It's on point. It's on point for what your body needs. But don't let the internet scare you.
Yeah. A benefit of living off grid. I had a follow-up quick question on that. What made you kind of come on grid and then move closer to town? Because that sounds idyllic, living in the country with a garden and cows. But I know there must have been hard parts of it as well, right?
Well, when I married my husband in 1985, they lived on 1,000 acres in northern Minnesota wilderness, 20 miles from the nearest paved road. And so we lived there for 4 years. He made us a log cabin there, pounded a point for our well, and we, cleared the woods for our garden, the whole thing. But he was the firstborn and the first one to get married in their large family, and his mother just could not let go of him. So Nathan said, let's go to Wisconsin. He was offered a logging job down here. Let's go to Wisconsin to help those apron streams to get cut. And then when my mother realizes we're our own family, we can go back. Well, it never happened. We knew if we went back, it would just be the same. So we ended up being here, but we are very much in the country. I live in an unincorporated little town. So we were able to buy 120 acres down here, build another log cabin on it. It didn't have electricity, so lived off grid. Till 2006, our family, it was a little 3-bedroom cabin. We had 10 children at the time. We're trying to decide what to do, build onto the cabin. My parents at the time were selling their house with 6 bedrooms, 3 miles from us, and we're going to downsize. And it just seemed to be the solution at the time. So we bought their house. And in our mind, it was going to be a temporary thing. And because we really loved our other land and loved that amount of acreage. I have 5 acres now, but it's still where we are. I think you know that my husband was killed in an accident in 2020. So I am still in that house. And so dreams and plans have changed a lot. And I'm just so grateful to live here. We still live where we're back removed from the town, but we do have electricity. I do have bathrooms and toilets and running water now for the first time in 2006, which is a real treat. Yeah.
Benefits of having a little bit of that, but also still being in the country. Definitely. Mm-hmm. And I am so sorry to hear about your husband. I did read about that online.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I'm really grateful for the adventuresome spirit he had that led us to do the whole off-grid thing. And a lot of the things that we tried and did was because of him being so adventuresome and loving to just be different than society. So we were doing the whole off-grid thing. He would dress like a Amishman for a season there. He just loved being different and countercultural. And so I just followed along for the ride, and I'm just I feel like I've lived 4 or 5 lifetimes with all the different things we've done and tried, and really grateful for the 34 years we had together. Yeah.
Absolutely. What an absolutely incredible story. So, so inspiring. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast and share all of that. So valuable to share with other people. Thank you so much, Renee.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been so fun to talk about it and share these things.